Hello, everyone. I'm Ellen Sentier, and this is Celtic Noir. And today we're having a story, not made by me, but one of our ancient ones, from up in Northumberland, which is up on the north east coast of Britain, just before the border to Scotland. And it's a very famous story about a dragon. This is the Laidley Wyrm of Spindlestone Hole. In Bamborough Castle once lived a king who had a fair wife and two lovely children, a son named Childwind and a daughter named Margaret. Childwind went forth to seek his fortune, as sons did, and soon after he had gone, the queen, his mother, sadly died. The king mourned her long and faithfully, but then one day, when he was out hunting, he came across a lovely lady of such great beauty. He fell so deep and deep in love with her that he determined to marry her. So he sent word home that he was going to bring his new queen to Bamborough Castle. The Lady Margaret was not too glad to hear of her mother's place being taken, but she loved her father very much and was glad that he could be happy again, for he had looked so sad for many a long day. And she did not repine, but did her father's bidding. So, at the appointed day, down she came to the castle gates with the keys all ready and off her belt to hand over to her new stepmother. Soon the procession drew near, and her father lifted down the new queen from her white palfrey and led her up to the Lady Margaret. And Margaret curtsied and bowed low and handed up the keys of the castle. Then she stood there, her cheeks blushing and her eyes on the ground, and said, "Oh, father, dear father, welcome to your halls and bowers, and welcome to you, my new mother, for all that is here is yours." And again she offered up the keys. Now, one of the knights who had escorted the new queen cried out in admiration as he gazed at Margaret, "Surely this northern princess is the loveliest of her kind." At that, the new queen flushed up, her eyes hard, and she cried aloud, "At least your courtesy might have accepted me." And then she muttered deep below her breath, "I'll soon put an end to this beauty." Now, the new queen was also a formidable witch, and she had gone out to the forest in the first place, where the king hunted, and there she laid a trap for him, and in he had tumbled, head over heels and willy-nilly. So, that very same night, the night that she had arrived, the witch queen stole down to the lonely cavern wherein she did her magic, and there she laid her spells, all 3 times 3, and she powered them with passes 9 times 9, and this was her spell. "I weird ye be a Laidley Wyrm, and borrowed shall ye never be, until Childwind, the king's own son, come to the Hull and thrice kiss thee." And now she threw up her arms and cried in a great voice to the dark moon, "Until the end of the world comes, borrowed shall ye never be." And then she cast the spells as a thrall over the Lady Margaret. So the Lady Margaret went to bed as a beauteous maiden, but next morning she awoke a Laidley Wyrm. At the usual hour in the morning, her maidens came in to dress her, and there they found no maiden, but coiled up in the bed a dreadful dragon. And the dragon uncoiled itself and came towards them, at which they all ran away shrieking in every direction, while the Laidley worm crawled and crept and crawled, all down the stairs and through the hall and out of the gates of the castle. And on it crept and on it crawled until it reached the high hole of Spindlestone. And there it coiled itself around and around to lie as a serpent basking in the morning sun, and to lie weeping with the grief of the Lady Margaret at never being able to live in her home no more, and no more kissing her dearest father, for she heard that her father had expired at the news, and for shame for bringing down such a curse upon his daughter. Soon enough, the country around had reason to know of the Laidley worm, Spindlestone Hoo, for hunger drove the monster, and drove it out from its cave and under the hoe, and its hunger was so great it would devour everything it came across. At last the people could cope no longer, and they went to a mighty warlock and asked him what they should do. He consulted his works and his familiar, and he told them. The Laidley worm is not really a worm, but the Lady Margaret, who has been enthralled. It is hunger, not wickedness, that drives her forth to do such deeds. Put aside for her each day 7 kine, and each day as the sun goes down, carry up every drop of milk that they yield to the stone trough at the foot of the hole. As you gift her the food, so the Laidley worm will trouble the country no longer. But, he added, if ye would that she be borrowed back to her natural shape, that she be unbespelled, and her who did it be rightly punished, then send over the seas for her brother Child Wind. And all was done as the warlock advised. The Laidley worm lived on the milk of the 7 kine each day, and the country was no longer troubled. But the witch queen was. She knew if Child Wind came home, her powers would be at an end. After long time, Child Wind heard the story of what had happened, and to his sister and his father. And then he swore a mighty oath to rescue his sister and revenge her on her cruel stepmother. And 33 of his men took the oath with him. They set to work and built a long ship. Its keel they made of the rowan tree, for the rowan protects from magic, and they knew there was deep, dark magic here at work. When all was ready, they out with their oars and pulled sheer for Bamborough Keep. But then, as they got near, the stepmother felt by her magic power that magic was being wrought against her. And she summoned up her familiar imps and said, Child Wind is coming over the seas, and he must never land. Raise storms, bore the hull, do all you can, but know how must he touch the shore. Then the imps went forth to meet Child Wind's ship, but as they got near, they found themselves held back, for they had no power over the ship. Its keel, its rowan keel, protected the ship and all in her against all magic. So the imps came back to the witch queen, and she knew not what to do. She ordered her men-at-arms to hold the shore, resist and strike down Child Wind if he should touch the land. and then, by her spells, she forced the Laidley worm down from her lair at the Spindlestone hole and made her lie in wait by the entrance of the harbour. As the ship came near, the worm unfolded its coils and, dipping into the sea, caught hold of the ship of Childwind and banged it off the rocks along the shore. Within the worm, Margaret could see what she was forced to do, but she had no power to resist. 3 times Childwind urged his men to row bravely on and strong, but each time the Laidley worm, under the enchantment, kept the ship away from the shore. And then Childwind ordered the ship to put about, and the Witch Queen thought he had given up the attempt. But instead of that, he only rounded the next point and landed safe and sound in Buddle Creek. Then, with sword drawn and bow bent, he and his men rushed up over the rocks to fight the terrible worm. But the moment Childwind had landed, the Witch Queen's power over the Laidley worm had gone, and so she went back to her bower at the Spindlestone hole, all alone. She had none, but not an imp, not a man-at-arms, none to help her, but she knew her hour was come. When Childwind came rushing up to the Laidley worm, it made no attempt to stop him or to hurt him. But just as he was going to raise his sword to slay it, the voice of his own sister Margaret came from its jaws, saying, "Oh, quit your sword, unbend your bow, and give me kisses 3, for though I am a poisonous worm, no harm I'll do to thee." And Childwind stayed his hand, but he did not know what to think. If some witchery were here, perhaps some witchery were in the worm. Then the Laidley worm said again, "Oh, quit your sword, unbend your bow, and give me kisses 3. If I'm not one, ere set of sun, one I never then shall be." So Childwind went up to the Laidley worm and kissed it once, but no change came over it. Then Childwind kissed it once again, and still yet no change came over it. For a 3rd time he kissed the loathsome thing, and then, with a hiss and a roar, the Laidley worm reared back, and there, before Childwind, stood his sister Margaret. He wrapped his cloak about her and took her up to the castle. When he reached the keep, he went straight to the Witch Queen's bower, and when he saw her, he touched her with a twig of rowan from the tree that keeled his ship. And straightway she began to shrivel, and she shriveled up and shriveled up, until at last she became an ugly toad with bold, staring eyes and a horrible hiss. She croaked and spluttered, trying to form curses with her toothless jaws, but naught came forth but hissing. Finally she gave up and hopped away down the castle steps. And Childwind took his father's place as king, and his daughter was restored, and they all lived happily ever afterwards. But to this very day a loathsome toad is seen at times of the dark of the moon, haunting the neighbourhood of Bamborough Keep. And the wicked Witch Queen is that Laidley toad. I hope you enjoyed this second Wicked Stepmother story that I gave you today. And I'll give you a new story next week. Don't know yet what it will be. That's all in the lap of the gods. So, I'll see you on the other side.